Thank you, Mr. Chair. While our nation stumbles toward a potential default, the Republican Party is wasting our time with consideration of a bill that will not move through the Senate and which the President has already threatened to veto. But even though this legislation is a futile effort, it does clearly articulate the philosophy of the Republicans in this House of Representatives. This is a bill that really makes one shake one's head. It is an astonishing effort to destroy hard-won, long-standing, and successful and popular laws. It cuts valuable health and environmental programs, it caps the responsibility of corporate polluters, and balances minimal cost savings on the back of our most precious natural resources. H.R. 2584, the funding bill for the Department of the Interior and environmental agencies, completely guts funding for public lands and public health programs that the American people care about and desperately need. A 64% cut to the state and tribal wildlife grants program and a 95% cut to the cooperative endangered species conservation funds mean we can expect a rapid increase in endangered and extinct species on federal and non-federal lands alike. An 80% reduction in the Land and Water Conservation Fund means we should not expect adequate maintenance of landmarks, including Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, Yellowstone National Park, or California's Big Sur coast. A 40% cut to the National Landscape Conservation System means 27 million acres of national monuments, wilderness areas, scenic rivers, and other treasures will be inadequately protected. A 60% cut to the North American Wetland Conservation Act means our birds and fish and wildlife resources will lose protections that keep these populations viable. A 55% reduction to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund means less protection for water quality improvement projects in the United States. And a prohibition of funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative means my home state of Illinois and the Great Lake, Michigan will lose millions of dollars in federal assistance to promote good jobs and clean drinking water for millions of our citizens. And while this bill severely cuts these and other priorities, it provides handouts to corporate polluters in the form of policy riders. These riders would threaten enforcement of public health and environmental laws which have protected our country for decades. One rider reverses a moratorium on uranium mining on the rim of the Grand Canyon and would turn one of our nation's most iconic landmarks into an eyesore. Another extends loopholes in the Clean Water Act, jeopardizing drinking water for 117 million Americans. And many others weaken the Clean Air Act and limit regulations against toxic air pollution, which saved an estimated 160,000 lives just last year. The Clean Air and Clean Water Act protected American health and welfare for 40 years and have been the catalyst for green energy investment and job creation. More than 80% of the American people believe the EPA should not be prevented from performing its duties. And the Gallup poll reports that 4 out of 5 Americans are personally concerned about the water they drink, as well they should. And although this legislation is dead on arrival at the White House, it poses a fundamental debate about the type of country we want to hand over to our children and grandchildren. Do we want to be a nation that oversees the disappearance of animal populations and wetlands and national parks because we aren't willing to ask for 1 penny more from millionaires and billionaires? Do we want to be a nation that turns away from water treatment and infrastructure in the hopes that no one will notice? Do we want to be a nation that values the profits of corporate polluters over the health of children? The Republican majority has clearly stated its position. I oppose this bill. The funding cuts and destructive policy riders that riddle this bill turn back the clock on vital environmental and health policies. We owe it to our children and grandchildren to uphold our commitment to clean air, clean water, and preserved natural resources. This weekend, my granddaughter who celebrated her 10th birthday, had her party on Lake Michigan and enjoyed the precious clean water. I urge my colleagues to vote against this attack on our American resources and our values.
The gentlelady's time has expired. For what